Welcome everyone to Half History Will Travel. I am your host, the Wilder Historian, and the patrons over on Patreon voted for which part of the Second Battle of Bull Run to be animated, and they tied. Thus, I will do the entire battle in multiple parts, so stay tuned in the weeks to come for the entire series. If you want to vote for the next animated battle map, join the Patreon page for as little as $1 and you can cast your ballot. By the end of the 7 days battle, the Confederate Army, now led by Robert E. Lee, had pushed George McClellan's Army of the Potomac off the peninsula in Virginia. Looking to capitalize on this success, Lee moved north to begin his first invasion of the United States. The rebel commander had organized his Army of Northern Virginia into two corps, the First Corps under James Longstreet and the Second Corps under Thomas Stonewall Jackson. The Union commander confronting the rebels in Northern Virginia was John Pope's Army of Virginia. The Union had taken up a position on the Rappahannock River near the Orange and Alexandria Railroad. Pope was to be reinforced by elements of the Army of the Potomac. Lee wanted to defeat Pope before this could happen, so he divided his force, sending Jackson to march north to threaten the right flank and rear of Pope's army. Longstreet would follow the next day. For the next few days, Pope searched for the elusive Jackson. At Manassas Junction, the Union commander found only destroyed railroad cars and Confederate deserters claiming that Jackson had went to Centerville. That was not the truth. After ransacking Manassas Junction, Stonewall had moved northeast of the old battlefield from a year earlier, positioning his corps on and above an unfinished railroad cut at the base of Stony Ridge. Pope was baffled as to where the Confederates had gotten to. He got word that Longstreet was making his way east through Thoroughfare Gap, but instead of attacking Longstreet, Pope continued to search for Jackson. The Union commander ordered most of his men towards Centerville, where he thought Jackson might be. Part of McDowell's corps, a division under Rufus King, began their march east toward the town along the Warrenton Turnpike, just a few hundred yards away from the unfinished railroad cut. In the woods lay Jackson and his 24,000 men, sprawled across a front more than a mile long, Hill on the left near Sudley, Ewell in the center, and Tolliver on the right, north of the Brawner's farm. Jackson had, at the moment, joined many of his men in slumber, and lay alone in a fence corner. The pounding of approaching horses, however, soon ended his rest. Mounted scouts reported a large body of Federals passing eastward along the Warrenton Turnpike, only a few hundred yards in front of the Confederate position. Jackson jumped up. He grabbed his sword and belt, buckling it as he ran to his horse. He mounted and rode away, galloping across the broom sedge fields until only an easy musket shot separated him from King's column. He trotted back and forth, watching the Yankees as they tramped by. For several minutes, Jackson studied the Federals. Then he pulled up, wheeled his horse, and galloped back toward his fence corner headquarters. The officers rose. He touched his hat in salute and said softly, "Bring out your men, gentlemen." King's division marched with Hatch's brigade in the lead, then Gibbon's soon-to-be Iron Brigade, followed by Abner Doubleday's brigade and Patrick's New York Brigade bringing up the rear. Colonel Gibbon rode to a knoll and saw movement just north of where his men were marching. It was Confederate artillery. Jackson's cannons unlimbered and began firing rounds of ammunition into the prone Federals. Union artillery of King's division began unlimbering to return fire. At this moment, the four brigade commanders thought they had found Jeb Stuart's horse artillery protecting the rear of Jackson's movement towards Centerville, especially because they had not yet seen any infantry at this point. The Federal units began to hug the ground as shrapnel exploded over their heads and attempted to find any sense of security in such a devastating barrage. Gibbon himself made his way to Doubleday and asked what to do. The brigades were without their division commander. Rufus King had become incapacitated from an epileptic seizure just before the opening shots. The two brigade commanders decided to attack and capture the battery located near Brawner's farm. For this job, Gibbon dispatched his veteran regiment, the 2nd Wisconsin. They moved toward the artillery position, but to their surprise, a long Confederate infantry battle line appeared out of the woods. It was the famed Stonewall Brigade. The men from Wisconsin were itching for a fight, even though they were outnumbered 2-1. When the Confederates got within 150 yards, the 2nd Wisconsin let loose a volley. The veteran rebel brigade was unfazed and continued advancing. They got to within 80 yards and lowered their rifles and fired into the Union ranks. For 20 minutes, the 2nd Wisconsin held out against superior numbers. The commander of the 2nd, Edgar O'Connor, got word to Gibbon that his men needed reinforcements. The 19th Indiana took up a position on the 2nd's left to help even the odds. Jackson became irritated at the lack of movement displayed by two of his division commanders, Tolliver and Ewell. Tolliver had only committed the Stonewall Brigade and had failed to move his other brigades. A.P. Hill's division was too far away to attack before nightfall. Ewell, who Jackson ordered to advance, was only preparing one brigade, the Georgians under General Lawton, for an attack, and only 2 or 3 of the regiments were ready for deployment. Eager to get his men into the fight in order to overwhelm King's brigades, Jackson personally led part of Lawton's brigade to secure Baylor's left flank. Gibbon countered Lawton's men by calling up the 7th Wisconsin. The Badgers quickly filed in along the 2nd Wisconsin. One member of the 7th remembered, "We advanced to within hailing distance of each other, then halted and laid down, and my God, what a slaughter." No one appeared to know the object of the fight, and there we stood 1 hour, the men falling all around us. We got no orders to fall back, and Wisconsin men would rather die than fall back without orders. Jackson again bypassed the chain of command and went straight to General Trimble, ordering his brigade forward. On the Union side, Gibbon wanted to secure his battle line and ordered his last regiment, the 6th Wisconsin, to the right into the battle. However, they did not connect with the 7th. Instead, they drifted to the east and would clash almost simultaneously with Trimble's brigade. A member of the 6th remembered hearing the rebel yell from Trimble's men. That yell, there is nothing like it this side of the infernal region, and the peculiar corkscrew sensation that it sends down your backbone under the circumstances can never be told. The drift of the 6th exposed a 700-yard gap in Gibbon's battle line. Doubleday, who had yet to commit any of his regiments, sent the 76th New York and the 56th Pennsylvania into the fray to plug the hole. Both sides duked it out in near darkness, only knowing where the enemy was by the flash of muskets. Despite the superior numbers, Jackson had been debilitated by a lack of coordination by his division commanders. With minimal light left, Jackson ordered an all-out assault by his left flank. Trimble sent the orders to his regiments, but only the 2 rightmost regiments received word to attack. As they moved forward, with no support, they became pinned down. Lawton's men lumbered forward, but got thrown back. Both sides had lost substantial amounts of men. The 2nd Wisconsin, fighting from the start, had lost their colonel, Edgar O'Connor. Now Lieutenant Colonel Lucius Fairchild, his sleeves rolled up and sword in hand, stalked up and down the line barking orders and directing the regiment's fire. Finally, General Tolliver's uncle, who commanded one of his brigades, made it to the battlefield. But the late hour made it nearly impossible to see. His regiments were pointed in the direction of the 19th Indiana, and were able to push them back a few hundred yards, but did not move further. The fight trailed off as it became too dark to see. Lanterns began to appear on the battlefield as comrades looked for their wounded. It had been a bloody few hours. The 2nd Wisconsin lost 276 of 430 engaged. The 7th Wisconsin lost 164. The 19th Indiana lost 210. Trimble's 21st Georgia and Lawton's 26th Georgia lost more than 70%. The Stonewall Brigade lost 40%, 340 out of 800. Stonewall himself would be greatly impacted by one casualty from his famed brigade. Willie Preston, his nephew from his first marriage, had joined the brigade only days before the battle. When Jackson's surgeon, Hunter McGuire, told the general of the young boy's death, McGuire stated that the general's face was a study. The muscles were twitching convulsively and his eyes were all aglow. He gripped me by the shoulder till it hurt me, and in a savage, threatening manner asked why I had left the boy. In a few seconds he recovered himself and walked off into the woods alone. The day's fighting might have been over, but the Second Battle of Manassas was just getting started. Thank you all so much for watching. Stay tuned for next week when I release the second part of the Second Battle of Manassas.